This week we're focusing on the principle of using strong verbs and avoiding nominalization. So what that means is that it's preferable to have strong actors with strong verbs in your sentences. So something or somebody doing something to somebody or something, right? So Joe kicks the ball. I manipulate the solution, or we manipulate the solution. So clear action using strong verbs rather than some flimsy verbs, versions of there are, there is, and so on. And often when we're revising our own work and we look at particularly some sort of science and academic writing, we see a lot of what we call nominalizations. So nominalization is, I also like to call them vampire nouns. Helen Sword, in a blog that you're reading this week, calls them zombie nouns. So what happens is that you take a perfectly fine verb like conclude or analyze and explain. You add an ending to it, usually ION, IS, Asian, meant, whatever, and you make this sort of nominalized version out of the noun, out of the verb. So conclusion instead of conclude, analysis instead of analyze, explanation instead of explain, assessment rather than assess. Now, are these nouns, conclusion, analysis, and so on, are they bad? No, they're perfectly fine. But often we use them in a way that obscures the real action taking place. And we're going to look at tons of examples today, and the readings for today in this video, and the readings for today also have even more examples. So by the end of this module, you'll be experts in spotting nominalizations, and they happen all the time in writing. I nominalize the heck out of the English language, mostly because my native language is German, and in the German language, especially in academic German writing, nominalized versions are actually preferred. It's a whole other conversation to have. Anyways, in English, however, the English language really thrives on a strong subject doing something expressed in a strong verb. That is the most effective way to communicate. So let me give you some examples of nominalized phrases and then examples for revisions. These are kind of sophisticated, and they, on the next slide, I'm going to show you some simpler ones, but I want to start off with these ones. And they come from a blog by this guy called, I think, David Jers. I have the link on the bottom here, but it's also in your Supplemental Materials section on Blackboard. So check it out, because his blog post is very interesting, and he has some general fun things on his blog in general. So if you ever have some moments you're looking for a good blog to read, that's one to check out. So the nominalized phrase here is conduct a careful examination of. I read this so many times in science writing, and then I have people always, writers, tell me, oh, I'm using too many words. I'm like, well, it's because often that's because we use so many nominalizations. So really what conduct a careful examination of means is scrutinize, which is a really strong verb. It's not a widely used verb. We don't use it every day in our language, but it is, a straightforward verb that expresses what 1, 2, 3, 5 words do. Same thing with cause a drop in the morale of. Well, demoralize. Just one verb, one word against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you're particularly looking at saving, you have a word limit, looking for nominalization is a really great strategy. And again, you'll see in some of the examples I show you, and that's why I call them vampire nouns and Sword calls them zombie nouns. Nominalizations really suck sort of the lifeblood out of a sentence and out of a narrative. And again, the focus here is on keeping the reader engaged. And the more active you can be in your writing, in your language, the better off your reader will be. And the clearer and more effective your writing will be. So some more examples, a little bit more straightforward. Give a report becomes report. Make a decision becomes decide. Offer a suggestion, suggest. Issue an announcement, announce. And sometimes you can make an argument that these nominalized phrases might be more exact than the revision suggestions here, but rarely, I want to say, especially when you're trying to communicate clearly and effectively. So keep that in mind. So let's look at our first example. And one of the little tips that I have is look for off, the preposition off, in sentences. They often hide nominalization. So here, MSGs offer considerable potential for the discovery of mechanisms that drive melanoma metastasis as well as novel therapeutic targets and prognostic/diagnostic markers for the management of. You see those offs here? Those are your markers for the nominalized version, which of course discovery would become discover, management would become manage. So let's see how this has been revised. MSGs offer considerable potential to discover mechanisms and so on, and prognostic diagnostic markers to manage. We also reduce the word count, which is an added benefit, but that's not necessarily always our prerogative. But what is our prerogative always or should be is being as direct as possible, and we can do that much more easily and clearly with direct verbs rather than nominalizations. So some more examples. A robust service center for clinicians is critical for successful adoption of EPIC systems and continuity of safe patient care. It also provides an opportunity for development of super users in various roles. So here in red and underlined are the nominalizations. Again, we're looking for the offs, right? There's three culprits here. For successful adoption of, continuity of, development of. So we're looking for the verbs. So here's the revision. The robust service center for clinicians is critical to successfully adopt. And I want to make the argument here that you could probably take successfully out, because if you adopt something, you would hold it successful, right? Again, if that's a point you really would feel strongly about as a writer, leave the adverb in there, but you could take it out safely if you need to save some more words. So to adopt EPIC systems and continue safe patient care provides an opportunity to develop. Little changes, but they really put some live blood into the sentences and make it, it's a little less of a barrier for the reader, a little less to stumble over in, as you're reading, when you take out normalizations. And that is always something as a writer you want to look for. So some more example about using quote unquote the real verb, right? So it's about the real verb rather than the nominalized version. And this is a typical sentence I see a lot in method section in particular. Each preparation of the solution is done twice. And on top of that, it's not really clear, is each preparation solution, is it done twice, or is it the preparation that's done twice? So there's some lack of clarity here as well, which is hard for us, or, to elucidate because, or to clear up, because we did not write the sentence. But possible revisions would be each solution is prepared twice, or we prepared each solution twice. So the first version, each solution is prepared twice. If you, depending on what comes before or after of the sentence, the passive voice might work here, and we'll look at passive voice in another lesson as well. The second one, we prepared each solution twice, certainly is the most direct one. Puts a clear after we, doing an action, preparing to something, namely the solution. Okay? So some more examples. Consideration should be given to an acquisition of these properties. So again, consideration, acquisition, big nominalizations. We have another off here that gives it away. So who is considering is my question. Consideration should be given. Well, who is considering what? Well, we should consider, or the University of Maryland, Baltimore should consider. Again, I'm making this up because I don't know the context of who is doing the considering. So I have to do, it's a little easier when you're revising your own work because you know exactly what you're writing about. It's a lot harder when you just get a sentence out of nowhere. So one possible revision would be we should consider acquiring these properties, right? So acquisition becomes the verbal form with ing of acquire. Or the University of Maryland, Baltimore should consider acquiring these properties. You could also say the University of Maryland, Baltimore should acquire, right? The should consider is kind of the same. Should consider expresses sort of the tentativeness. So you can take out the consider. Again, as the writer, you'll know what you're trying to say and what the message needs to be. But just from a perspective of looking at the principle of using strong verbs and avoiding nominalization, it's clearly something's going on here that could be improved. So another sentence here, it is widely known that the engineers at Sandia Labs have become active participants in the search and rescue operations in recent years. So Again, active participants hides an action that engineers have been doing. So they've been participating. So let's put that in the sentence. So in recent years, engineers at Sandia Lab have participated in search and rescue operations. I put the in recent years at the beginning. I've taken out this, it is widely known that. Again, it's an expression I use all the time when I'm drafting, and sometimes it's appropriate, but often it's unnecessary. And I challenge you that in most cases you can probably take it out. And I want to say, to quantify it, in 95 out of 100 cases it probably improves the writing. Or let's say in 8 cases out of 10. Let's get a smaller number there. It will improve the writing. That's based on my personal experience, just to, give you some sort of number. But not always, right? So again, you are as the author, as the writer, you get to make that decision. Another revision to further kind of revise it down, engineers at Sandia Lab have participated in recent search and rescue operations. So rather than recent years, I made these operations recent. It's another way to rephrase it, to shorten it up if that's my goal, or to make it more direct, to maybe just have a sentence without any additions, right? In recent years, comma is an addition at the beginning of the sentence, and they're not wrong. You actually should have those. But maybe this is a paragraph that's already full with very complex sentences, and it could use sort of a breather of a shorter, more direct sentence like this, and that would be the way to do that. So, more examples. They will also be involved in abstract development, workshop facilitation, and presentation regarding the analysis and interpretation of the data. Also be involved in what? Well, let's just talk about what they're going to be doing. Namely, develop abstracts, right? Abstract development, workshop facilitation, facilitate workshops, and presentation, give presentations about analyzing and interpreting the data. So little changes that just makes it a little bit more direct. Again, less for your reader to stumble over and to distract him, her, or them as they're reading the narrative. Some supplemental materials, there's some blog entries and some other pieces that I've added. This one is a fun one, actually. Let me click on it briefly here. From Wordvice. And it lists 100+ strong verbs that will make your research writing amazing. If I were you, I would bookmark this somewhere or put it in my favorites, because it has, if you go to the very bottom, it has some really great table here where it says to express the purpose of a paper or research. This paper, a study investigation, aims to discuss, present, surveys, questions, considers, analyzes, shows you some of the widely used verbs in science and academic writing, especially analytical writing. You're writing journal articles, or you're analyzing information provided by other sources. So this list is very, very useful. So I put the link to that in the supplemental materials as well. So nominalize away, or I should say no, that's not correct. Strong verb away, and let's end those nominalizations. And again, as with all these other principles that we've covered and the ones that we're still covering for the rest of this class, these principles are most useful when you're revising a draft you've already written. So don't feel as you're typing, you got to check yourself on avoiding nominalization. You will drive yourself crazy. Take those principles and apply them when you're revising your work.